The forest was alive with sounds that Commander Zerakel had never heard before. Crisp leaves crunched beneath her damaged stealth suit, each movement sending sharp pain through her injured leg. She knew her camouflage had failed completely. The advanced technology that had made her the pride of the Voidborn Collective's reconnaissance team was now nothing more than a useless shell of broken circuits and flickering lights. Her four-fingered hands pressed against a massive oak tree, its rough bark so different from the metallic surfaces of her homeworld. Blood. A deep purple that looked almost black in the dim forest light, leaked from a wound she had sustained during a crash. Her mission had been simple: scout the planet known as Earth, assess its defenses, and prepare for the coming invasion. But nothing had gone according to plan. The sound of approaching vehicles made her freeze. Human technology was primitive, or so she had been told. Loud, clumsy, predictable. Yet these sounds were calculated, precise. Military-grade communication snippets crackled through the air, disciplined voices cutting through the forest's natural symphony. Target location confirmed. Approach with caution. Zerakel's translator implant decoded the words perfectly. Her species had studied human languages for decades, preparing for this moment of first contact. But the information packets she had studied never prepared her for this, the raw, unpredictable nature of being truly exposed and vulnerable. She remembered the briefing from her commanding officer, Commander Vexnar. His words echoed in her mind. Humans are violent, territorial. They will not hesitate to eliminate any potential threat. The Voidborn had conquered dozens of civilizations. Their intelligence suggested humans were just another species to be cataloged, controlled, and ultimately subjugated. But something felt different here. The first human appeared between the trees. Tall, muscular, wearing camouflage that blended perfectly with the forest environment. A rifle was held with practiced precision, not wavering for a single moment. Dark eyes scanned the area, catching the slightest movement. Zerakel knew she could not fight. Her energy weapon was damaged, her communication devices crushed. She had seen recordings of human warfare, brutal, efficient, merciless. They would capture her, interrogate her, and then eliminate her without a second thought. Contact. The human's voice rang out. 3 more soldiers emerged, their movements synchronized like a well-oiled machine. Zerakel noticed something unusual. No panic, no wild shooting. Just calm, calculated approach. Her translator picked up soft commands, team coordination that spoke of extensive training. The lead soldier, a man with a scar running down the side of his face, stepped forward. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, Zerakel felt something unexpected. Not hatred, not immediate aggression, something more complex. "Stand down," the scared soldier said, his voice firm but not aggressive. "We do not wish to harm you." These words contradicted everything she knew about human first contact protocols. Where was the immediate threat? The violence, the territorial aggression her species had documented. Her leg gave way, and she slumped against the tree. Defeat was not something Voidborn commanders accepted easily. But here she was, captured, injured, completely at the mercy of a species she had been trained to consider inferior. The soldiers surrounded her, their weapons raised, but not actively threatening. The scared soldier remained at the front, studying her with an intensity that suggested more than just military assessment. "Who are you?" he asked simply. Zerakel realized in that moment that her entire understanding of this mission, of humans, was about to change forever. The facility was nothing like Zerakel had imagined. Instead of a cold, sterile prison, she found herself in a space that seemed more like a blend between a medical center and a research laboratory. Soft white lights illuminated clean walls, and strange machines hummed with a gentle, almost melodic rhythm. Jack Reyes watched her carefully. His scar caught the light, a testament to some past conflict that seemed to tell a story of its own. The humans had removed her damaged stealth suit, replacing it with a simple medical gown that felt impossibly soft against her skin. Her injured leg was carefully bandaged, the wound treated with a precision that surprised her. "You're safe," Jack said, speaking slowly. His hand moved to a device on the table, a translator that seemed far more advanced than the implant in her own head. Zerakil studied the room. No restraints, no visible weapons. Just medical equipment and what looked like scientific instruments. Her training told her to be suspicious, but something else, a growing sense of curiosity, began to override her defensive instincts. A woman in a white coat entered. Her movements were calm, professional. Unlike the military personnel, she approached with a clipboard and a look of pure scientific interest. "I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez," she introduced herself. The translator worked perfectly, converting her words with crystal clarity. "Your physiology is fascinating," Dr. Rodriguez continued. "We've never encountered a species quite like yours before." She pulled out a small device, scanning Zerakil carefully. There was no threat in the movement, just genuine scientific curiosity. Jack remained near the door, watching but not interfering. Zerakil realized this was different from every first contact scenario her people had ever documented. The Voidborn typically approached new civilizations with overwhelming force, treating unknown species as potential threats to be neutralized. But these humans, they were treating her like a subject of study, a potential source of knowledge. "We have questions," Jack said, his voice calm. "But first, we want to ensure you're healing properly." A tray of food was brought in. The smell was unlike anything Zerakil had experienced. Complex, layered, the Voidborn typically consumed nutrient supplements. Efficient, tasteless. This looked like art. Different colors, different textures. A small cup of what she would later learn was water sat beside the meal. Dr. Rodriguez noticed her hesitation. "It's compatible with your biological systems," she explained. "We've run preliminary tests on your metabolic requirements." The implications hit Zerakil hard. They hadn't just captured her. They had studied her, prepared for her, considered her survival important. "Why?" The question escaped her before she could stop herself. "Why are you helping me?" Jack moved closer, but not threateningly. His eyes told a story of complexity, of understanding that went beyond simple military protocol. "Because that's what we do," he said simply. "We learn, we understand, we help." For the first time since her capture, Zerakil felt something beyond fear or anger. Confusion, yes, but also a growing sense that everything she knew about humans might be wrong. Dr. Rodriguez began explaining something about their medical scanning process. Jack listened, occasionally adding technical details. Zerakil observed their interaction, the way they communicated, the respect evident in their conversation. Her people would never interact like this. The Voidborn were hierarchical, rigid. Every interaction was a test of power, of dominance. These humans seemed to work together, sharing knowledge as if it were a shared resource. As the evening progressed, more researchers came and went. Each treated her with a mixture of professional distance and genuine curiosity. No one tried to restrain her. No one showed fear or aggression. Zerakil picked up the food, examining it carefully. The first bite was a revelation. Flavors burst across her tongue, something her nutrient supplements had never provided. Complex, warm, almost welcoming. She was a prisoner, but not in any way she had ever understood the word before. 3 days passed, and Zerakil's understanding of humans began to shift like tectonic plates. The research facility was a world of constant discovery. Each interaction peeled back another layer of human complexity that her people had completely misunderstood. Jack Reyes became her primary point of contact. He wasn't just a military officer, he was something more. A translator of cultures, a bridge between two entirely different worlds. During one of their conversations, he brought a device that looked like a simple tablet but contained what he called historical records. "Look," he said, pointing to images of human conflicts. "We haven't always been peaceful. We've fought terrible wars, killed each other over land, beliefs, resources. Zarakil expected a presentation of human superiority. Instead, Jack showed her something entirely different. He showed her human failure, human weakness, human struggle to overcome their own destructive nature. Images flickered across the screen. Wars that had devastated entire continents, conflicts that seemed senseless and brutal. But then, something unexpected. Images of reconciliation, of people from opposing sides coming together, of rebuilding, of healing. We learned, Jack explained. Slowly, painfully, but we learned. Dr. Rodriguez joined them, bringing what she called historical context. She explained how humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. Climate change, nuclear threats, pandemics, economic collapses. Each challenge could have ended human civilization. But they survived. More than that, they adapted. The Voidborn had conquered civilizations by exploiting weakness. They found a species struggling, identified their vulnerabilities, and crushed them. Humans were different. When they faced a challenge, they transformed. Our greatest strength, Dr. Rodriguez said, is not our technology. It's our ability to change. Zarakil remembered her training. The Voidborn Collective taught that adaptation was a sign of weakness. True strength was about maintaining a rigid structure, an unchanging system of power. But watching these humans, she saw something revolutionary. They showed her medical records, breakthroughs that saved millions. Technologies developed not for conquest, but for healing. Vaccines created in record time during global health crises. Environmental restoration projects. Communications technologies that connected people across vast distances. Jack pulled up a file about something called the International Space Station. Humans from different countries, once bitter enemies, now working together in the most challenging environment imaginable, floating above their own planet, proving that cooperation was possible. We are not perfect, Jack said honestly, but we keep trying. Zarakil's translator caught every nuance, every subtle meaning. The humans weren't hiding their flaws. They were presenting them openly, showing how they learned from their mistakes. Her own people would never do this. The Voidborn Collective buried their failures, destroyed evidence of weakness, maintained an image of absolute perfection. Humans did the opposite. They documented their failures. They learned. They grew. A communication device blinked. Jack's expression changed. Something was happening. The room's energy shifted. Your people are coming, he said simply. An invasion fleet. Zarakil felt her heart race. Everything she knew about first contact was about to be tested. The humans around her didn't panic. They didn't reach for weapons. They started planning, collaborating, thinking. And for the first time, Zarakil understood that she was witnessing something extraordinary. Not just a species, but a living, breathing, constantly evolving civilization. The war room was not what Zarakil expected. No displays of aggression. No shouting. Just calm, calculated movement. Military personnel and scientists worked side by side, their cooperation more intricate than any battle formation she had ever witnessed. Jack Reyes stood at the center, his scarred face illuminated by holographic displays, showing the approaching Voidborn fleet. Multiple screens displayed complex tracking information, orbital mechanics, and communication frequencies. They're coming in 3 waves, a woman in a complex military uniform explained. Her fingers danced across a holographic interface. First wave is reconnaissance. Second will be heavy assault platforms. Third is full invasion force. Zarakil felt a surge of panic. These were her people, her civilization, and yet she found herself hoping the humans would find a way to survive. Dr. Rodriguez approached her, carrying the strange device. "We need your help," she said simply. No threat, no manipulation, just a direct request. The alien commander hesitated. Helping humans meant betraying everything she knew. The Voidborn Collective had strict protocols about information sharing. Traitors were not just executed, they were erased from historical records. Their entire genetic line would be terminated. Your scan revealed something interesting, Jack said, pulling up a technical diagram. It showed her species' genetic structure, something no human should have been able to understand so quickly. The diagram revealed a critical weakness. The Voidborn had a genetic degradation process that they had hidden from their own people. Each generation became slightly less stable. Their advanced technologies masked this fundamental flaw. "We can help you," Dr. Rodriguez said. "But first, we need to prevent your fleet from destroying our planet." Zarakal's mind raced. Betrayal meant certain death from her own people. Helping humans meant potential survival, not just for herself, but potentially for her entire species. A young scientist approached, carrying what looked like a communication device. "We've been monitoring your fleet's communication patterns," he explained. "We can create a counter-signal that will confuse their initial assault." The room was filled with a strange sense of purpose. No fear, no panic, just focused preparation. Jack turned to Zarakal. "We're not just trying to survive," he said. "We're trying to prevent unnecessary loss of life. Your people, our people, everyone." She understood now why humans were different. They saw potential where the Voidborn only saw targets. They looked for solutions when others would only see conflict. The first wave of the Voidborn fleet would arrive in less than 6 hours. Military personnel moved with practiced efficiency. Scientists continued their calculations. The entire facility hummed with a kind of controlled energy that Zarakel had never experienced. "I will help you," she said finally. The words felt both terrifying and liberating. Jack nodded. No celebration, no dramatic moment, just understanding. Dr. Rodriguez began explaining the plan. They would use a combination of technological disruption and diplomatic communication. Not a traditional defense. Something far more complex. Zarakel realized she was no longer a prisoner. She was a bridge between two civilizations that could not be more different. The holographic displays showed the incoming fleet. Massive, destructive, seemingly unstoppable. But the humans in the room didn't look worried. They looked prepared. And in that moment, Zarakel understood that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology. It was imagination. The ability to see beyond the immediate threat, to find solutions where others saw only destruction. The communication chamber was unlike anything Zarakel had ever seen. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a military installation. It was something far more complex, a bridge between worlds. Jack Reyes stood beside her, his hand occasionally touching a holographic interface. Dr. Rodriguez worked on complex translation algorithms, making sure every single word would be precisely understood by the Voidborn collective. "We're not just going to defend," Jack explained. "We're going to communicate." Zarakel watched in fascination. The Voidborn would never consider communication as a primary strategy. Their approach had always been simple: identify, engage, conquer. But humans saw the world differently. The first transmission began. Instead of threats or military posturing, the message was a detailed analysis. They showed the Voidborn collective their own genetic weakness, the degradation that had been hidden from their own people. They presented scientific data, medical solutions, and a startling proposal: cooperation instead of conflict. The communication was multilayered, technical data mixed with philosophical arguments, historical references that showed humanity's own journey of overcoming destructive tendencies, mathematical projections that demonstrated the mutual benefits of collaboration. Dr. Rodriguez worked with incredible precision. Each word was chosen carefully. Each scientific term was translated with multiple contextual layers. They weren't just sending a message. They were creating a bridge of understanding. Zarakel's translator picked up every nuance. The humans were doing something unprecedented. They were offering help to a species that had come to destroy them. The Voidborn communication channels began to respond. Confused, angry, suspicious. But the humans kept transmitting. Layer after layer of information. Not just defensive arguments, but constructive proposals. Your genetic degradation can be reversed, Jack said simply. We can help you, but only if you're willing to listen. Hours passed. The invasion fleet hung in space, massive and threatening. But something was happening. The communication was creating cracks in the Voidborn's unified approach. Internal communication channels, ones that Zerakil had never heard before, began to activate. Debates, arguments, discussions that had never been allowed in the rigid Voidborn system. The humans had done something extraordinary. They were forcing the Voidborn to think. Zerakil remembered her training, remembered how any deviation from the collective's established protocols was considered treason. But here, the humans were introducing a radical concept, individual thought within a collective system. Jack noticed her watching. We're not trying to defeat your people, he explained. We're trying to save them. The transmission continued. Scientific data, medical solutions, potential technological exchanges. But more than that, a fundamental challenge to the Voidborn's entire way of thinking. The invasion fleet remained in position, but something had changed. The rigid, unified approach was fracturing. Dr. Rodriguez looked up. They're listening, she said quietly. Zerakil realized that this was true warfare, not with weapons, but with ideas, with understanding, with the radical possibility of seeing the other side as potential allies instead of enemies. The humans had turned an incoming invasion into a potential conversation, and in that moment, everything Zerakil knew about conflict was being rewritten. The tension inside the Voidborn command ship was unlike anything in their history. Commander Vexnar, the most senior leader of their collective, watched the incoming transmissions with growing confusion and anger. Zerakil's betrayal was more than just a personal failure. It was a fundamental challenge to everything the Voidborn believed about themselves. The ship's communication chambers buzzed with unprecedented debate. Junior officers, typically silent and obedient, began asking questions. The genetic research provided by humans created cracks in the collective's rigid structure. We cannot trust this information, Vexnar declared, but his voice lacked its usual absolute certainty. On Earth, Jack Rice and Dr. Rodriguez monitored every signal. They weren't just defending. They were strategically introducing doubt. Each transmission was carefully crafted to challenge the Voidborn's understanding of themselves. The humans had discovered something critical. The Voidborn weren't just a military civilization. They were a species in slow genetic decline, hiding a fundamental weakness behind layers of technological advancement. Zerakil stood between two worlds now, no longer a simple reconnaissance commander. She had become something else. A bridge, a translator of possibilities. Your people are dying, she told Vexnar during a direct communication, and you refuse to see it. The transmission revealed medical scans that the humans had developed. Complex genetic analysis showed how each Voidborn generation was becoming slightly less stable. Their advanced technologies had masked this decline, but could not prevent it forever. Inside the command ship, something unprecedented happened. Debate erupted. Not the controlled, emotionless exchanges typical of Voidborn communication. Real discussion. Real questioning. Jack understood something profound. Conflict wasn't about destroying an enemy. It was about changing their perspective. The Voidborn fleet remained in position. Massive. Threatening, but no longer unified. Dr. Rodriguez explained the strategy to the human leadership. We're not just defending, she said. We're offering a solution. The humans had prepared multiple layers of communication, scientific data, medical research, potential technological exchanges, but more importantly, they offered something the Voidborn had never experienced, a path to survival that didn't involve conquest. Zerakil watched the internal conflict unfold. Her own future hung in balance. Betrayal among the Voidborn meant total elimination, not just of her, but of her entire genetic line. But something was changing. The junior officers in the Voidborn fleet began requesting more information. The rigid hierarchy was developing its first cracks. Questions were being asked. Doubts were emerging. Vexnar tried to maintain control, but control was slipping away. "We cannot show weakness," he repeated, but the words sounded hollow now. The humans had done something extraordinary. They had turned an incoming invasion into a potential conversation. They had transformed a moment of potential destruction into an opportunity for understanding. Zerakil realized that this was true power, not the ability to destroy, but the ability to imagine a different future. The Voidborn fleet remained in position. Massive, threatening, but something fundamental had changed. For the first time in their history, the Voidborn were being forced to think beyond their established protocols, to question, to consider an alternative to conquest. And in that moment of uncertainty lay the most dangerous weapon of all: hope. The moment of truth arrived with unexpected silence. Earth's defense systems hummed with a quiet intensity that spoke more of preparation than panic. Jack Reyes stood in the central command center, his eyes fixed on the massive holographic display showing the Voidborn fleet. Zerakil stood beside him, no longer a prisoner, but something far more complex. Dr. Rodriguez entered, her tablet displaying complex genetic and communication data. "They're breaking," she said simply. Not with excitement, just a statement of fact. The Voidborn fleet had stopped its invasion sequence, not retreated, not attacked, just paused. Internal communications intercepted by human technology revealed a civilization in the middle of its most significant transformation. Junior officers were challenging commanders. Scientists were demanding access to the medical data provided by humans. The rigid structure that had defined the Voidborn for generations was crumbling from within. "We've never seen anything like this," Jack muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Zerakil understood both sides. She knew the Voidborn's protocols, knew how unthinkable this moment was. A reconnaissance mission turned into a potential salvation for her entire species. The first official communication came not from the fleet's commanders, but from a group of mid-level Voidborn scientists. Their message was complex, desperate, hopeful. "We need to understand." The transmission read, not a demand, not a threat, a request. Human technology had done something extraordinary. They hadn't defeated the Voidborn. They had given them a choice. Military personnel around Jack moved with practiced calm. But this wasn't a traditional military response. This was something else. A carefully choreographed dance of diplomacy, science, and unexpected compassion. "They're asking for medical assistance," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice a mixture of professional calm and barely contained excitement. "Full genetic analysis, potential treatment protocols." The Voidborn fleet remained in position. Massive, potentially destructive, but no longer unified in its purpose of invasion. Jack looked at Zerakil. "Your people are at a crossroads," he said simply. She understood the weight of those words. The Voidborn had conquered dozens of civilizations, always moving forward, never stopping, never considering an alternative. Until now, the communication channels buzzed with unprecedented activity. Not military commands, not invasion protocols, but questions, scientific inquiries, medical requests. Commander Vexnar, the senior leader who had once been absolutely certain of the Voidborn's superiority, was losing control. His own people were challenging everything he believed. Zerakil realized this was more than a military moment. This was a species learning to think differently. Human defense systems remained active, not as weapons, but as a protective shield. A statement: "We are prepared, but we are also willing to help." Dr. Rodriguez began preparing medical data, genetic analysis, treatment protocols, not as a weapon, but as an offering. The humans had turned an incoming invasion into a potential partnership. Jack's scared face showed no triumph, just understanding. A deep, fundamental recognition of a profound moment of change. The Voidborn fleet hung in space, no longer an instrument of conquest, now a question waiting to be answered. And in that question lay the most revolutionary weapon of all: the possibility of something different. 5 years had passed since the day Zerakil crashed in the forest. The world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Joint Research Facility stood as a testament to an impossible transformation. Voidborn and human scientists worked side by side, their collaboration more complex than any military alliance in history. What had begun as a potential invasion had become something extraordinary, a partnership of survival. Jack Reyes walked through the facility, his old scar now a faded reminder of that first encounter. Zerakil worked nearby, no longer a prisoner or an alien, but a critical bridge between two civilizations. The genetic research had revealed more than anyone expected. The Voidborn's slow genetic decline wasn't just a medical problem. It was a symptom of a civilization that had stopped growing, stopped questioning, stopped evolving. Humans had shown them a different path. Dr. Elena Rodriguez reviewed the latest medical scans. The Voidborn's genetic structure was stabilizing. More than that, it was adapting, changing, growing in ways that defied their previous understanding of themselves. "We're not fixing them," she often explained to visiting researchers. "We're helping them rediscover themselves." The first generation of hybrid research teams had already begun. Young Voidborn scientists trained alongside humans, their perspectives mixing in ways that would have been unimaginable 5 years ago. They didn't just share technology. They shared ideas, possibilities. Commander Vexnar, once the most rigid of Voidborn leaders, had become an unexpected advocate for change. His transformation was perhaps the most shocking of all. The man who had once planned total invasion now spoke about mutual understanding. Zerakil remembered her first days on Earth. The fear, the confusion, the complete certainty that humans would destroy her. Instead, they had saved her people. The research facility was more than a scientific complex. It was a symbol of something larger. A proof that first contact didn't have to mean conflict. That understanding could be more powerful than any weapon. Jack approached Zerakil, bringing her a cup of something she had grown to love, a human drink called coffee. Their friendship was unlikely, impossible, even. Yet here they were. "We're publishing the next phase of genetic research," he said simply. Zerakil understood now what made humans special. It wasn't their technology. It wasn't their military might. It was their ability to see potential where others saw only threat. The Voidborn collective was changing. No longer a conquering force. Now a civilization learning to explore, to understand, to grow. Satellite images showed Voidborn ships exploring new territories, not to conquer, but to learn, to discover, to expand their understanding. Dr. Rodriguez joined them, her tablet showing complex genetic models. "The latest generation shows remarkable adaptability," she said, a scientist's excitement mixed with genuine wonder. Jack smiled, a small, quiet smile that spoke volumes. Zerakil looked out the window. Earth and Voidborn technology merged in the research facility's design, a physical representation of their newfound partnership. She thought about her first moments in this forest. Injured, afraid, certain she would die. Instead, she had found something unexpected. Not just survival, not just understanding. A new future. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't found in its technology or its military might. It was found in its capacity to transform conflict into connection. To see an enemy and imagine a friend.